Hello, and welcome to the original Remake Podcast, a show where we take the role of Hollywood executives shamelessly exploiting your nostalgia for money. But we do it for love instead of greed. My name is Pat, and I'm joined by my wife, Amy.
Hello.
And Andrea.
Hi.
And her husband, Nick.
Hello.
And this week we are discussing the 2018 Ready Player One, based on the book by Ernest Cline. All right, everyone, welcome. I think we should start out. Nick, this is your pick
Indeed.
of the movie. You're a big fan of the book, correct?
I am.
I am not a fan of the book. And I think, Amy, Andrea, have you read the book?
I have not.
I read
it. Okay. So, Nick, we'll jump to you to give a very brief kind of synopsis for the film. And just as a forewarning, we're going to spoil the movie and the book. So if you mind them being spoiled, they're both several years old, but this is your warning. Nick, go ahead with the synopsis.
All right, cool. First things first, Pat, you're wrong. Sorry. It was a fantastic book. But as far as the movie goes, in short, it's like 2045, the planet, it's like post-apocalyptic-ish, kind of a dystopian future. The book kind of opens with saying something about how like nukes have gone off and this is the day-to-day life. The movie touches on it very briefly, but there's this more positive spin on it. I just wanted to kind of throw it out there quick. But the real focus of the movie is this VR universe called the Oasis that was created by this super eccentric nerd named James Halliday. When he dies, he promises the entirety of his company, his fortune, everything in his possession to the first person to discover what he calls his egg or Easter egg that he's hidden somewhere in the Oasis. The movie is following Wade Watts. He finds himself going from zero to hero in a hurry.
I can't believe he used that cliche.
Continue.
Sorry.
Listen. My synopsis, okay?
If he wants to bring Hercules into this, he can bring Hercules into this. It's fine.
I suppose.
But yeah, no, actually, that was about it. It's shown and kind of narrated in such a way, and it does follow the book in this regard, that all of this has already happened, and it's his story that he's telling back.
Yeah, he's at least I remember correctly from the book, he's setting the record straight.
Yes.
Essentially, right?
Yes.
Essentially making an autobiography of what happened because everybody else is doing it wrong. In the movie, there isn't that context. In the movie, it's just, hey, everybody, this is the story of me.
Right.
Yeah, fair. Nick, I want to stay on you because you love the book. I guess how much do you just like this film? Because I'm the opposite. I despise the book, and I think the film is not very good, but better than the book.
You know, there was a moment where I believed we could be friends. That moment just died. No, I'm 100% the polar opposite. I believe the book had a lot of let me start with this. You can tell that the book was like kind of a first major book by an author kind of book.
Yes.
If that makes any sort of sense.
And here's the reason we know, because it's very badly written.
Okay, hold on. There are some seriously cringe parts of it. The bones of it are fantastic. The story, that feeling of kind of like a D&D quest, kind of like a Stranger Things kind of vibe in that sense. If you strip all the nonsense out of the book and just boil it down to its core components, it's a fantastic story about a small group of people going on a quest.
I did this last time. I'm doing it again. If I could sum up this film in a sentence, I would say this film is great if you've never read the book. It's terrible if you've read the book and are a purist.
Well, I can understand that because I've never read the book and I thought the movie was all right, even the second time around. There's things I could change, yes, but it was not bad.
I've gone through that movie maybe 4 times now. I saw it in theaters. I was super stoked for it. I went in with an open mind knowing that Spielberg had thrown it right out there in like trailers and whatnot that it was not going to be the same experience as the book, but they, there was interviews and whatnot saying that they were trying to do like a Marvel style spin on it, where sure you've got the comic books and basically a storyline written for you, but that's not what makes it fun. What makes it fun when you go to the movie theater is you're getting all the same major plot points while still playing with the story to keep it fun and original. And that's not what we got in theaters.
Absolutely not.
It's nowhere near that. And I think
it wasn't fun, nor was it original. And it catered too much to capitalism.
Yeah. I didn't even get to one of the points I wanted to make about this being just a giant freaking money grab by a bunch of different corporate entities.
The book is definitely one thing I'll say that I appreciate about the book. Not appreciate, that's the wrong word. It was an early adopter of this nostalgia as a form of entertainment, right? I mean, you mentioned Stranger Things. Stranger Things led to an explosion of, we're going to pick a thing and just bring back people's kind of good feelings about the past. And this is kind of that pretty early on. When was the book released? Like 2010, 11, something around there?
Like 08 or something.
The book was 2011.
2011.
Stranger Things season 1 was 2016.
Yeah. So I'll give the author credit in that, just kind of going all in like on nostalgia, which both, like things like Stranger Things just don't work outside of like, this is a romantic look at the 80s, right? Or 70s and 80s, whatever it is. I enjoy that, but both the book and the movie just turned my brain off. And I guess specifically to get back to the movie and talk a little bit about what you were saying, you were kind of a little bit bored. The first 15 minutes are fantastic. I'm not a fan of narration, but it really works well here.
Yeah, I agree.
If you haven't read the book, if you don't really know a lot about like virtual worlds, which, even back in 2018, VR was still relatively new in the mainstream. Getting that narration to say, here's where, here's what the world is. We're in some sort of dystopia. In the movie, they kind of make it like almost like an economic and environmental dystopia. They don't really mention, like I said, they don't mention like wars or anything, but they mention like riots and things like that. And then you get right into, okay, now I'm going into the Oasis, and here's a 10-15 minute introduction into everything you need to know about the Oasis in an entertaining and like quick fire manner. And that was really good, including the race. That very first race that they go through, expertly done so far as special effects go, brilliant.
Oh, sure. Complete fabrication, though.
That race is not in the book at all.
It doesn't exist.
That's what I was wondering. How different is the certain parts of each Easter egg hunt?
Exceptionally different from what I understand, right?
Exceptionally different. Yeah. The point of getting the keys. Oh, I'm sorry, Beast. You should probably explain this.
No, you're fine. But you were going the same direction I was going to go. So it's an Easter egg hunt, right? And in the book, it opens up with what is
an Easter egg.
The first Easter egg. What is an Easter egg? How did it come to be? There was a mini history lesson about the game Adventure on Atari.
Put a pin in that, because we'll come back to that.
And how the first games that were released on Atari and similar type systems, often the creators of those games were not credited. It was the publishers that were credited, or whomever contracted the work that got the credit, not the actual creators of the games. And Adventure is a game where if you do a certain set of tasks, you pick up a key that's really just a little pixel shaped or a single pixel dot, and you take it to the special section of wall that is actually not a physical barrier. You can push through it, like no clip through it into another room. You see this game created by, and the game creator's name just scrolling on your screen. It was the original Easter egg, and it kind of introduces you to why you should give a damn about James Halliday taking his many hundreds of billions of dollars and his corporation and the entirety of the Oasis in this world that they just painted a picture for you, and why you should give a damn about Easter eggs and what the hell they are. And the movie just says, here, congratulations, you're in a race on a racetrack in a race that is unbeatable, that people just keep beating their heads against the wall on, and that, you know, if you win this magic race, you're just going to own a company. It's
Right.
so
It's
one-dimensional. It's ridiculous.
they're not, and that's kind of one of my critiques of the film, and quite frankly, also the book, is that none of the challenges seem to be about like the corporation. In real life, the corporation would have won the challenges early on, right? Because in the novel, or in the film, let's take the film, that you have to win the race. Okay, I've been, you know, a 12-year-old playing Gran Turismo. What's, you know, trying to complete it. I got the 99% complete bug, you know, and couldn't get to 100. The first thing you do when you're in a racing game and when you're a child is you go backwards, right? The idea that no one figured it out was
Sure.
like obnoxious to me. And I
Yeah.
feel the same way about every single part of the film. Is it doesn't take anything special to figure this out. It doesn't take any special being a character. Even the stuff with Halliday's wife, you don't need to know anything about that. You just need to get to The Shining. Okay, you need to know about his history, but that doesn't build your character. And then you need to know that he, cared for this woman, and then dance with her. Like that. That's it. Like, you know what I mean? So nothing in the film, and quite frankly, again, I this is one of the few novels I'm an avid reader, and I normally truck through just to give authors the benefit of the doubt. This is one of the few novels I never finished, but the parts of the novel I did read felt like the same thing to me. I'm like you basically just won this by just knowing a bunch of stuff, and like the corporation would know.
You had to be an 80s expert. And in addition to being an 80s expert, you had to know James Halliday up and down, backwards and forwards, in and out. And that was that was the entry, I guess. You didn't have to know that you needed to drive backwards. You had to know the entirety of the movie War Games and be able to quote it.
Yeah, that's
you know,
I think that's
memory.
right around when I quit. I think that's right around when I quit the book. And I love War Games, but goddamn.
So you actually didn't make it to all the good parts then.
Okay.
Because that was kind of the cost of entry, if you will. So I get it for what it is in a narrative structure book side.
Yeah.
You had to do a bunch of world building for something that didn't exist before. You're talking about an entirely new concept, not necessarily a new concept or a novel concept. It's more of these different components haven't been assembled in this way before, and then a story overlaid on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you have to drive a lot of story. And unfortunately, the first key and the first gates of which are not even existent in the movie.
No, you just complete the challenge to get the key.
In the book, instead of it being a race and going backwards, because that drove me nuts. I mean, the first time you hand your second controller to someone, it turns into a smash up derby.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't play the game anymore. You just, I think that's where what game was that? Twisted Metal came from. Yeah. It's a bunch of people just smashing into each other. Like, come on. So to kind of resonate with your point, but at the same time, the book did it so much better in that it was accessible. It talked about the economy of the Oasis. It talked about how this kid that literally had nothing was able to join in this contest. You couldn't move from one planet to another without currency. And this kid had no currency. It was in a public school system inside the Oasis.
If I could jump off on that, that was a perfect place for me to put in this comment. Mm-hmm. One of the things that really frustrated me about the movie, and the book did a better job, but especially coming from Steven Spielberg, this is the man who brought Jaws and Jurassic Park to life, for crying out loud, and Band of Brothers. And we are like, in this film, we don't know anything about Wade Watts. We don't know anything about Artemis. we don't know anything about H or how IROC comes into the picture. A lot of the characters are just popped into existence, and I don't know why.
That's what I was driving at.
Care. Like, I don't have any reason to like these people. I don't know why Wade has a thing for Artemis. I don't know how he and H got together. I don't know anything, and I'm not incentivized to care.
That's actually exactly what I was driving at. Not only was this contest accessible in the book, because without getting too far into the backstory, I mean, go ahead, read the book. Pat's wrong. It's a good read. The fun and accessible part of it that kind of drew me in to get me through the boring bits of the first gate
was character development.
Was the character development, in that this character who had nothing but his pride and some ego that he needed to work through later on, was able to enter this contest because the contest existed on a planet that everyone could go to regardless of their wealth, their status. It showed how accessible it was, and that really all you needed was knowledge and persistence to get through this quest. And the very first key, the first Easter egg, part of the Easter egg hunt, if you will, was a D&D module. And I just love how that slots together, because with some creative looking at the public school system planet, they found what looked like D&D module 1, the Tomb of Horrors, the art on the front of the D&D module looks like a skull in the side of a mountain. And he finds this on the planet and he goes there. And the way that he gets there, because he has no money, was more puzzle and problem solving. And how do I move to the other side of the planet? It would take me a week to jog there if I were to do it in game real time. You know, how do I do that? Oh, well, I can go to the school sports department and get a ticket for some random sports ball game happening nearby, and just jump on through a teleporter and end up on that side of the planet and get what I need. And this nobody low level something sneaks through the dungeon because he had the module there. He had his knowledge. He had his wherewithal to get through the dungeon to the end, and plays a game of joust against a Sararak, the Lich King Guardian of this dungeon, and just playing this game, which is again a bit of 80s nostalgia. It's something that was listed in Anorak's Almanac, I believe it was called.
Right, which I don't think they bring up in the book, in the movie.
I don't think so either, but it was basically a cheat book. If y'all remember Game Genie or those sections of Nintendo Insider, it was cheat code section that told you what you needed to know. It was essentially the egg hunters, or the gunters as they're called in the book and the movie. It was their Bible. It had everything that James Halliday found interesting or held dear, and were keys to understanding his perspective on the universe and what would give you the best chance at winning this.
And I feel like some of this stuff, it's impossible to put all of this into one, film, 2 hours or 90 minutes. I think this movie was 90 minutes. No, it wasn't.
It was 2 hours.
It was 2 hours. Our last episode was 90
it was 2 hours, but the last 40 minutes is just one giant action scene, really, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God, that's even wrong.
I feel
that was so wrong. Oh my God.
I feel like that Steven Spielberg, being who he is, knows better. He should be able to work with the screenwriter to get it into a place that honored the source material enough. And
I think he tried to a degree, but I think in trying to do that, he took entirely too many liberties with the original story. He tried to turn it into a love story.
Ugh.
Yeah, I want to jump in here because I want to defend Steven Spielberg, because you mentioned, Andrea, Jurassic Park earlier. It was one of the films he made. That's based on a Michael Crichton novel.
It is.
The book is completely different. And in fact, a lot of Michael Crichton's work, he is what I would call a pop science fiction writer, or was. He's passed away now. And that's the same thing that Ernest Cline, I think, is trying to do, right? He is trying to be a science fiction writer but for mass audience. Think about Andy Weir or Blake Crouch, these type of guys as well, where it's definitely science fiction, but it's enough thriller and it's enough pop culture that it's easy for an outsider of kind of nerd or geek or sci-fi culture to read and understand. In fact, I've got a couple Blake Crouch novels up on my bookshelf behind me that if someone who didn't read sci-fi asked, I would definitely hand them those novels because they read like thrillers.
I've read a couple of, like, I read Jurassic Park and The Lost World and The Martian, and to another extent, The Andromeda Strain, which was also by Michael Crichton.
Yeah,
and all of the great movie and fantastic book. But in all of those examples, I wasn't as supremely annoyed by the movie adaptation not being true to the book or vice versa. Like, I read Jurassic Park and I saw the movie not in that order, but it was like, oh, okay, these stories, like the movie story stands up on its own as compared to the book standing up on its own.
I guess that's fair. And there's definitely been bad adaptions of Michael Crichton novels. I'm thinking of Timeline with Paul Walker.
God.
Maybe we could remake that one at some point. But
oh man,
I guess I'd like to defend. So Ernest Cline was involved in the screenwriting of the film as well.
Yeah.
From what I understand, I haven't read the second one, obviously. The second one apparently basically kind of tries to connect the movie and the book together and then move forward that way, which is a little weird.
If you didn't like the first book, you will absolutely not like the second. Okay. It definitely goes a little bit more towards fantasy than science fiction. I would give it like a 6 out of 10. I read that one when it came out. If Ready Player One is a solid 7 or 8 out of 10, then this was a 5 or Ready Player Two was like a 5 or a 6.
Okay, all right. I guess what I'm trying to say is Steven Spielberg is a master director, and I don't particularly care for Ready Player One, the film. Especially not the book, but definitely the film. I think it is very mundane. We'll get on to like stuff like the Iron Giant is like a robot that hates violence. So like you're even getting the nostalgia wrong on like having the Iron Giant punch people in the face constantly.
Yeah, that was also not how it played out in the book.
Yeah, but I think so far as his ability to tell a story and his visual filmmaking, I think all of that is still on display here. Not the best it can be. But like I said, that first like 15, 20 minutes is like top tier. Like there's a strange universe that not everyone's going to know about. And we need to tell we need to tell a general audience what is happening here in 15 minutes. And he did a fantastic job of that. And I just, again, not having finished the book, I think it would be worse if you just took the book and made it into a movie or a miniseries, because, if you spent the time on it. I would worry about just adapting the book directly. In my opinion, it would be worse because I don't think it's entertaining, for example, to have someone read line for line War Games. There's also like there's a Monty Python skit in there at some point in the book, if I remember correctly.
Is so I agree. And I think those could absolutely be ripped out if you were to try and let me back up. So I do agree with you that turning the existing book into a script would be a bad idea.
Okay.
I think it would also hurt to have anyone on the B list of directors, if you will, try to attempt this. I do think essentially rewriting the entire story the way that it was rewritten, because if you distill it down, there's a VR universe where a crazy billionaire is giving away his fortune if you find an Easter egg, is the only thing from the book that came over to the movie. That's about it. If you go through it with a critical eye, sure, you've got the character names that are the same. You've got your main male and female characters that fall in love in the movie for some inexplicable freaking reason in the movie.
You've got Wade kind of being creepy the whole time.
Oh, God.
He's not actually creepy in the book, overtly creepy. Like he's like, wait, I can't say any of these things because it would be creepy, but I'm kind of crushing on this girl that I've never met. Wow, that sounded creepy even in my own head. Like he says stuff like that to himself in the book, so that we understand where he's coming from and what his feelings are. It's just a bit of exposition. In the movie, you can't do that. So it just looks like a creepy dude being like, whoa, oh my God, fawning over this chick I've never met. And her avatar character, nonetheless.
Right. That is the thing from the film. I mean, Twitch was around, but it feels like a guy fanboying over like a Twitch sub or something like that, where he's kind of getting that Stockholm syndrome of, oh, we have a personal relationship, even though, you've never met, right? It's all in your
and
head.
So before we went on kind of this tangent about remaking the film this way, what I was trying to get to with that first module and that first dungeon is he gets to the end, he beats the lich, he gets the gold key or copper key, and Artemis walks in. And that is the first time they meet virtually. And Artemis, being through the stress of making it through the dungeon and getting to the key and being the only other person on the planet to know about it and so on, just vents at Wade. And they have a bonding moment and a reason for me as the reader to give a damn about them as people, as more than just two-dimensional characters on the screen. You get none of that in the movie. You have no bonding moments whatsoever. And if I say there's one major failing of the movie is we have no reasons to care about these characters. They're two-dimensional characters.
I get what you mean. Like there's a section where they're like spitting out at each other facts about Halliday, and it's a pissing contest.
It is, but that's not a reason to fall in love.
Right, exactly. You mentioned that in the book, they shared a real bonding moment, which is what the film really was missing.
Right.
It should have been less pissing contest, more relatable vent session, because the things that the character Artemis was saying in the book are all very valid things. She's like, what are some of the things she was venting about? Like, I can't believe I didn't get it right. And I came back here only to find it was you and this and that. And it's like, those are all things that a perfectionist deals with.
Right. And like, she just rambles and then she says, oh my God, I'm rambling. And then you have this thing like apparently in the Oasis, you can censor your emotions so that anything being shown on your actual real world face doesn't portray to your avatar. And she forgot to turn that filter on. So you can see her blushing when she gets called out on certain things. And like, it makes her vulnerable. And Wade is already vulnerable because he's a very low level, like he's level 1 and she's like level 45 or something. And he's afraid she's just going to like strike him down and steal the key. And, so he's kind of walking on eggshells and it's a very vulnerable moment for the two where we get to, as the third party looking in on this situation, get invested into the characters. And there's just no moment like that in the movie. There's just no reason to care about them.
That's true. And I agree with that. And I think, like I said, like Amy was saying, when the kind of second time through, it's kind of just very mundane. If you're going to kind of turn it into more of an action adventure, you've got to make the action and adventure relatively interesting.
Yeah.
I think I realized watching it the second time around, the first time I liked it was because of the nostalgia. And because I've never seen I've never read the book, I didn't have anything to go off of. So I was like, oh, I know that, it's anyone that's a fan of certain 80s. Nothing pulled me in. I didn't like the relationship. What are they called? Second characters?
Yeah, the supporting characters. I mean, they're all, and there's a lot of convenience in the film plot as well. It comes to like, they all just live in the same city, I guess. And again, the corporation would win. Like I'm fine with suspending my disbelief, but the corporation would win every time. The puzzles in the movie are so simple. If you have a room full of Wades, like they do in the movie, they have a room full of people helping them out. They would figure it out. They would know, like that last thing, they would know you're not supposed to finish the game. They would know to go through the Easter egg, right? Like in the climax.
But you had to set up that plot point, right? You had to set up that plot point because you didn't use it in the beginning to describe what this whole thing's about. So you saved that for the end of the movie to be your defining moment, the climax of the movie, and everybody sees it coming a mile away. Even the one lady in the IOI's headquarters there, she was like, "Oh, pick adventure," and they're like, "See, adventure didn't work." She's like, "Yeah, because you didn't go for the Easter egg." Like she even foreshadowed it on the IOI side, and it's like, guys, come on.
They definitely set that character up as someone who was going to be helpful to the good guys at some point, and then they never did.
Yeah,
they
did nothing with it. And How about the only reason this movie even works in the first place is because the division head of the oology division, the egg hunting party of this multi-quadrillion dollar corporation that's trying to do a hostile takeover of the Oasis and dumping funds like you wouldn't believe into the egg hunt, if you will. The only reason why the heroes of this story are able to do what they need to do to win is because dude wrote his password down on a sticky note on the side of his Oasis haptic rig.
At least have Google save it. Come on, what are you doing?
Oh my God. Like, and then introducing some funky new hacking feature as like, that wasn't anything that was in the book. That wasn't like, they actually spent quite a bit of time in the book saying how stuff like that wasn't possible. And that if you ever caught doing something with like cloning your character or whatever else, you could be banned from the Oasis forever. And tell me that GSS, the makers and maintainers of Oasis, find that IOI in any capacity are screwing with the terms of service. You're telling me they're not going to just automatically permaban the corporations that's trying to pull a hostile takeover of them?
Yeah,
Really?
I mean that's where the movie breaks down anyways, because you could, Simon Pegg's character.
Oh yeah.
What's his
Ogden
name?
Morrow.
Ogden.
Yeah. Just ban them right away. Like you can see they're the bad guys. They're not subtle about it. They're in shareholder meetings saying what they're trying to do.
It just falls apart.
Let's kind of quickly, because I do want to move on to casting and your changes. But one thing I do want to mention in the film, which is very irritating to me, is the extra life token.
Oh God, that was done wrong. So wrong. The book did it right.
Okay, I didn't get that far in the book, but in the film, he tosses him this coin, and I'm like, all right. And but then later on, it's almost, there's no, Wade doesn't need to do anything to survive the planet destruction. It's only because he got help from the person who probably should be the owner anyways.
Yeah.
Because he seems like the nicer person than Wade, Real
quick, without delving too deep in there so that we can move on to recasting. I do want to give you a little bit of backstory on that. In the book, Wade is trying to find the second key. He and Artemis had a falling out, just like they did in the movie. The way that, she ended up in a, what do they call it? Loyalty center.
Yep.
The way that did not happen, not even close to that. The way that it actually happened in the book was fun as hell. It was like some Mission Impossible shit with Wade Watts.
You mean in the book she didn't just decide to get captured for no reason?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It was Wade who decided to get captured.
Wade actually intentionally did get captured, like created a fake identity, gave it a whole bunch of debt, got it indoctrinated, had this whole plan for being like this mole on the inside. So seriously, consider giving the book an extra go. Skip after the first gate. Anyways, he and Artemis had a falling out. They were like boyfriend girlfriend status for a hot minute, and they had a big falling out. So he's all hurting and kicking himself and whatnot, and just saw that Artemis found the second key, and then cleared the second gate. And now he's got to double down his efforts. And in searching for the second key, he goes to a planet named Arcade. It's a planet made of basically arcade shops, of every arcade cabinet that has ever existed, every video game that's ever existed ever. And he's walking around and he sees a Pac-Man machine. Now, he's been here before. He's been on multiple levels of this place, and he's seen Pac-Man machines before. But this one had a quarter rested on the marquee, which any of us old enough to have actually played in old school arcades, like ages ago, that was a way of reserving next. Yeah. I get to play next. That I put my quarter there. I'm reserving next game. So he's like, okay, cool. He tries to remove the quarter and it doesn't budge. So he plays Pac-Man and he sees that on the high score list, in first place is James Halliday. And it's 30 points from the maximum possible score that you could ever get in Pac-Man. So it's this, like, if it were an 80s movie, this would have been the montage moment, right? Like,
he goes through the entire game of Pac-Man, I assume.
Yeah, you put on the cliche 80s montage music and 37 jump cuts, And we're here. We're in this moment. So he plays Pac-Man after many failed attempts. He finally is in the zone. He does it. He beats the game. He gets a perfect score. He puts his name on the scoreboard, and the quarter falls off the marquee and into his hand. And that's it.
Okay.
He has no idea what it is. He has these anyone that's ever played an MMO, you can go to an NPC that tells you about your items and what they do. He essentially does that version of item information in the Oasis, and it says nothing. It doesn't say anything about what it is. So he's like, whatever, and carries on. Eventually finds the keys, gets to the end of the game, end of the Easter egg hunt, and that huge, massive battle does happen. But again, while the Iron Giant is there, he's like super defensive, not an offensive like Voltron style character like in the movie. But yeah, there's just like in the movie, the Cataclysm that goes off. But like in the movie, it just showed the planet getting wiped out. In the book, it's the entire sector, and there's only 27 sectors in the Oasis, gets wiped out. That's its thing, is any character in that sector gets wiped out. So basically, if you manage to somehow drop in to that sector after it's been wiped out, you're going to be the only one there for a very long time, because it's going to take a while for people to get back there.
I'm not going to lie. I still hate the way he gets the coin in the book as described by you.
I think that's way better.
Yeah, it is better than just getting tossed it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like winning a bet. Like that's how he gets it in the movie.
A bet that shouldn't have existed in the first place, I might add, because like if you're a true gunter, you should automatically know everything that you're watching. That entire scene in the movie of being in the archives, of which don't exist in the book, by the way.
Well, the archives is a shortcut. That way they don't have to say things like Anorak's Almanac and all that other stuff.
Right. It's 100% for exposition and to let us, the audience, know what the hell's going on. But like the way they make it sound like Wade and Artemis are having these enlightening moments and discoveries and whatnot drove me nuts, because they should already know these things.
Again, which goes back to character development.
Yeah. But anyways, so him getting this quarter the way that he did, he actually worked for it. He thought it was something to do with the quest that he was on, turned out to be a dead end, thought nothing of it, had it in his inventory when the world exploded. And then it says game over on his console. And then all of a sudden fades back into reality. He lost everything. He didn't have any of his equipment, weapons, anything on him. He was basically back to being a regular character with no inventory, but he kept his levels and his status and was able to finish out. We should probably move on, because
deep breath, Nick. Deep breath.
I could go on and on and on about how the book was a fun story to navigate the puzzles. Like, I'm that guy that loves me some Portal. And I felt that this was a journey through a game like that. It was just puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, and the payoff was there whenever you figured the puzzle out. I think the movie was just 100% plot armor driven and just a poor representation of the book.
That's fair. And listen, the book is highly rated, so I might be that I'm in the minority here when it comes to the book. I would like to give a quick alternate recommendation of a book called Snow Crash. And Nick, I think you should read this book if you haven't. It's way before. It's like from the 90s. It's very similar in that there's a VR world, but the 1990s version of VR.
I see.
So nothing compared to what Ready Player One does. But it's similar to, without being the kind of geek culture side of it, it is very much a early-ish cyberpunk novel that deals with a lot of the same issues, aka who controls cyberspace, who controls, people's access to certain things and that type of thing. So if you bounced off Ready Player One, and I'm sure some people listening to this did as well, I would recommend Snow Crash by, I think it's Neil Stephenson. And I honestly, if you like Ready Player One, I think you'll very much enjoy that novel as well. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a recommendation for people who've read the book and were interested in reading kind of more or similar things. Okay, so kind of jumping on then to casting.
Before we go 100% into casting choices, don't hate me.
No, that's okay.
I think this is kind of important. One of the things that they didn't touch on between the book and the movie was Wade Watt's true dark moment. That moment of the hero's journey where everything falls apart. where you've got to claw back to the top to get to the payoff. They essentially cut that. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where Artemis ended up in a loyalty center for no reason and then could literally just reach up, grab a handle, and walk out. Like, that was 100% plot armor to somehow put someone in IOI headquarters without actually going through what the book did. And a super summarized level of what Wade went through is he essentially created a fake identity and gave it a bunch of debt, was taken in, grabbed a bunch of keys off the dark web, because that's how everything works, is it needs some to explain something away, pick the dark web. Grabbed a bunch of keys off the dark web to hack the systems at IOI. So he spent I don't know what the time frame was, but we'll just pick an arbitrary time frame of like 2 months in IOI headquarters as one of their indentured servants, slowly gaining more and more access to the internal systems, and then used those systems to have a little robot inside the Oasis bring the Cataclysm and other nuclear devices and things to the final keys location and set it all up so that he could detonate it once he got himself out of the loyalty center, and set everything up to save the day. And his motivation for all of this was to prove to Artemis that he was in this wholeheartedly, that he would sacrifice anything to win this contest, because that was the big argument point that really drove them apart. So that whole dark moment, rebuild moment, climbing the mountain back up to the climax doesn't exist in the movie. And the reason why I just wanted to touch on that real quick is because the movie completely sabotaged the payoff. We're sitting there watching IOI employees fall through the ice at the end of the movie, and why do I care? But anyways, I wanted to bring that up because the casting choices didn't really matter because the characters were very two-dimensional.
Well, also they're literally in a VR world too. So like, like Ty Sheridan, you got to feel bad for that guy. Like, his two biggest franchises are this movie and X-Men, and both of them half his face is missing. You know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
Yeah.
The only thing I had a hard time finding was that Artemis is described many times as, quote, Rubenesque. And her in-world character also looks Rubenesque, which is just a fancy way of saying curvy. And I couldn't find an actor that would fit the way that Artemis is, but that also looked that way. So at the end of the day, I just went with the actor that I thought would best fit, not the one that would best look the part.
Yeah, I kind of tried to keep that in mind too, because like in the book versus the movie, Artemis starts a line of clothing called RT Miss, MISS, for full-figured women.
Okay.
So like the movie only touches on it when she's getting pissed at Parzival for falling for her, saying, "You don't know what I look like. You don't know who I am." And kind of exclaiming how this is not what I look like. This is not who I am. This is not my real body. This is the book, my favorite line is, I could be a 300-pound guy living in his mom's basement named Chuck. And like, that's the thing, right? Like there's the avatar you and then the real you. And anyways, I'm tangenting again.
No, it's okay. I mean, in the movie, she is just extremely pretty with a birthmark. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So but that's a fair point that, there's a certain amount of Hollywoodization of the characters, which is kind of to be expected. But I don't know if I should even mention this. There's like, I think it's either video or audio of the author like reading a weird nerd poem about kind of this, and I'll send it over to you if you. Okay. We won't like read it off on the podcast. It's just hilarious to me.
Okay.
Reading that poem made me understand why he wrote this book.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. So
now I feel like you need to read the poem.
No, I'm not going to. It's not PG. I don't think so.
Oh boy,
goodness, that's fantastic.
Wait, who wrote this poem?
The author of the novel, Ernest Cline.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out later. Oh man, hope it doesn't sully the my perspective on the book. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Nick, let's jump into casting.
Sure.
Again, it like we said, it doesn't particularly matter as much because so much of the action takes place on, in the Oasis, but kind of walk me through your kind of main casting choices here, and we'll jump in as we have
sure
comments.
Yeah, so I was going to start with Wade because he's obviously the main character, and or Wade / Parzival. And I was thinking Josh Hutcherson from Hunger Games, PETA from the Hunger Games. I think he could pull that off a heck of a lot better.
I don't like that actor, but I think that's a good pick.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
On what Pat says, actually.
Every time he's like from last week, Chris Pratt. I don't know why. I just every time I look at him trying to act, I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna punch you.
But
be better at your job.
The actor that plays PETA, I think I don't dislike him as much as the one who played Wade.
Oh, really? You like him better than I like Ty Sheridan. I think he's a decent actor.
Yeah, I think Ty Sheridan.
How can you tell in this movie? Because he's it's barely any character.
He doesn't. Yeah, that's true. He doesn't emote.
All of them.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that didn't make it easy, but if I'm looking for choices that I think could fit in that spot better, I think Josh Hutcherson was a better choice, a better fit there.
I wanted to throw out Ansel Elgort. Is that his name? I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's the guy from Baby Driver. And I really enjoy that actor. He's kind of like I call him like a mini Ryan Gosling, where they just don't, he's a very good actor at just like keeping his face very neutral while still displaying emotion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but was the character Wade Watts, was he supposed to be that debonair? Is that the right word I'm thinking of? And I look at that actor and I think he deserves to be the good, like it just doesn't seem.
Ansel Elgort looks a lot like Ty Sheridan.
He does.
Like they look like they could have been twins.
Had they done representation of IRL characters and in-game characters differently, and you needed someone to be able to go stone face and not emote well in the Oasis, I think that could have been a better fit.
Okay.
Because Baby Driver opens with dude about to do a freaking robbery getaway. He's just chilling in the driver's seat, listening to music and popping bubblegum.
I did not see that movie.
That's unfortunate. We'll have to fix that.
Yeah, it is a fantastic film.
So I see where you're going with that. I think the way if we're to take the movie as it is today, I can see it, but I think Ty would be a better pick.
Okay.
Over Ansel.
That's fair.
On the Samantha / Artemis, I went back and forth a lot on this one. I don't know if you guys saw my notes constantly changing, but I ended up settling with Kat Dennings.
And that definitely is settling, man.
Listen here. So to give some context to that, I saw Kat Dennings in the sense of like Thor 1.
Okay.
Like you've got that witty comedy, the deadpan humor, but also absolutely could take care of her own.
I just see her more as a comedic actress. Like she's funny.
Right. And I think that is me trying to say this might sneak a little bit more of the book into the movie. Because the character in the book was very serious when she needed to be, but also fun and energetic and all of that when she wanted to be too.
My only problem with this pick remaking the movie now is she's getting up there, right? Up there so far as someone young.
Sure.
I don't know how old she is. I'm gonna look it up real quick. She's 36, which I feel like is too old.
Hey.
For that particular role, I'm also 36.
To that end, my original pick for this was going to be Tessa Thompson. But then I was like, nah, I don't think she can pull off a 17, 18-year-old. I'm about 90% of the way there saying Kat Dennings, but I haven't really truly found a good fit.
Okay. It is hard, and I was struggling as well. I went with and I don't have suggestions for all of these, but for the two main characters I wanted to pick. But Chloe Grace Moretz was my, because she's still young enough. You forget how young she is because she's been around for a while, but I think she's a pretty good actress. I think someone is very kind of underrated and or she's not necessarily faded, but I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff recently. And I think she could pull off the action side of it. She's young enough. Maybe she's too pretty for like what they're going for? If you're going for a direct
No,
port.
looking at her, like I haven't seen any of the movies that she's in, but looking at her, she looks like she'd fit the part pretty well. Like
I could see it.
She's, curvier. And, even though she's pretty, the book and the movie, like the character is pretty, but she's got like a birthmark that like obliterates half her face. So you could just, make up. And I think that she might be a better fit than my pick. Then again, I haven't seen any of the movies that she's in. She just looks like she might work.
I have seen Kick-Ass, and having seen that, I agree. I think she could drop into the role. And I hate to say it, but I actually like that better than my pick.
Yes.
Yeah. And I like it better than my pick. My pick was McKenna Grace, who played, if you saw Ghostbusters Afterlife, she was like the little girl. She was also a housewife, or a wife in an episode of, or a couple episodes of The Handmaid's Tale. And she was really good in both of those things, I think. She was spunky. She, I felt like that when she ever had to make a comeback, she would make a comeback quickly. And she also held both roles. I mean, both roles were one was more serious than the other, but I felt like she was able to hold those down well. And I think that based on that, she'd be I don't know. I feel like Chloe Grace Moretz, hilariously, they have the same middle name going on. I think Chloe Grace Moretz would fit it a little bit better, but my pick was McKenna Grace.
That's an okay pick. I see she's been in The Haunting of Hill House as like a younger version of someone that's a great show. I only know her from, like you said, Ghostbusters, the newest one, which I enjoyed. And yeah, I think she'd be an okay pick as well.
Why does
so
it
I was
say...
looking up McKenna Grace, and it says in her filmography was Ready Player One.
What?
What?
Oh yeah, she's one of the kids in the classroom that was crying over.
Well, just promote her to
James
a
Holloway.
lead. We'd be fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
Actually, I remember that.
Holy
Elementary
crap.
kid.
I think I remember seeing her.
Wow. Okay.
That is
Her
funny.
first-
That is funny.
Her first role.
For Helen or H, I picked Zendaya. I mean, look at Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She's got, you know what? She's got the comedic chops to do it.
Absolutely.
She could pull off playing a dude in the virtual world.
I was thinking Aquafina.
Oh.
I like that.
But she might also be too old for this.
I do love her.
But also you're in the
Legend of the
VR
Thing.
world where they're supposed to be different ages, and she has the comedic value. And also, I know nothing about this character, so it was really hard.
In the book, H is also a high schooler.
H is also a high schooler that is Wade's best friend, and they've been best friends for a few years.
So it's not a female?
Well, H is in real life a female.
Yeah.
But in the Oasis, a male.
Same
thing.
Deal.
Same spiel. He doesn't know. He just knows that H goes to school on the same planet he does, but he doesn't know that H is actually a female.
Right.
Aquafina is 34.
Oof. Okay.
So probably not for
that
this
might be.
movie. But I think that's a good pick outside of age. I think Safar is someone who could pull that off, and because that character's they're almost the comedic relief, right? For a lot of the movie at least. And I think that's a perfect role to keep them in. I know that they do other stuff, but like it's them and what's his face doing the jokes, the villain there.
IROC.
IROC.
What was
Sorrento.
that guy's name? TJ Miller. I wouldn't change it either. He's really funny.
No, he was fantastic. All I'll say is there was no reason to really hate him in the movie. I know I'm beating a dead horse now, but you're not taking my stick away. So IROC in the book was this bully kind of idiot kid that hung around with H and Wade in chat rooms. In the movie, he just looks like a mercenary or something.
Yeah, he's like the mercenary for Sorrento, the head of IOI. In the movie, I get, those of you that play Magic the Gathering will know what I'm talking about. But in the movie, IROC, I get real Tezzeret vibes.
Huh.
I could see that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would not recast his role. I think TJ Miller, if you've seen Silicon Valley.
Yes.
TJ
Deadpool.
Miller is the Deadpool, absolutely, the bartender, is the absolutely perfect pick for IROC. In book version or movie version, he fits perfectly. Sticking with perfect picks, I think James Halliday was perfect with Mark Rylance. The way the actor was able to portray this eccentric, anxiety-driven recluse of a person was perfect, and I wouldn't change a thing.
He's a fantastic actor. He was in Dunkirk, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, and he was just in a new movie about the mafia, which I cannot remember. I just saw it. Like
The Outfit.
I think you're right. I think it's called The Outfit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some acting chops. I think he just did very well in the role. I think the way he portrayed that role was fantastic. I think it would work book or movie, and I think that's like gold star, right? If you could portray the character as they were supposed to be in the book, in the movie, even with the modifications, I think that's the ultimate win.
Agreed.
Now, Sorrento.
I'm disappointed here. I'm disappointed that you're keeping good actors from the movie, but not keeping Mendelsohn, who's a terrific actor.
I think he did well, but I don't think he had and keep in mind, I'm sullied, if you will, by the book into just how truly nefarious this guy is supposed to be. And the current actor just didn't do it for me. But I think what would have been absolutely amazing, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, and I'm going to take the hand slap for it, is Alan Rickman, who would have been absolutely excellent. But because I didn't want to be that guy and pick an actor that has passed, I went with Bryan Cranston, like meth cooking crazy man from Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like
he could make the role a little more serious.
Yes, and it needed to. And you probably made it this far in the book. But right after finding the first key in the first gate, Wade was essentially blackmailed into showing up to IOI headquarters to be given a deal of a buttload of money for IOI to find the first key. IOI turned around and blew up his city block.
I mean, they did that in the movie as well.
They did, but the dude just seemed detached from reality in the movie. Like, pushing this button doesn't actually kill people. In the book, it was like, wait, who's going to care if another meth lab in your stack goes up and takes out a bunch of people? Like, you need some serious darkness, and I think Bryan Cranston can bring that to the movie.
That's fair. I just love Rogue One, the Star Wars film Rogue One, and he's a terrific villain in that.
Yes,
and
he is.
I just think if he maybe got a little more screen time, that he could have done more with that role, I guess.
I didn't know he was.
I think it might have been a direction thing too. I think he was trying to bring some levity to the character when it shouldn't have been there.
Fair.
But yeah. So Ogden Morrow.
I got you on this one. You wrong. But go ahead.
Simon Pegg, don't get me wrong. I love the guy. He gave me the remakes for Star Trek.
Hot Fuzz.
I
love Hot Fuzz.
And
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. Oh my God, they're just so fantastic.
End, yeah.
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible, he's pretty good into. So, like, don't get me wrong. I love him as an actor. He doesn't fit here.
Nah, I like him in this role. So I don't think I'd change that.
I don't think he fits here. I picked like Batman style Michael Caine. And the reason I picked that, because if we're gonna stick true to the film here, and we've got to pull off that curator role and like dude hiding in plain sight, what better than a Batman butler to do that?
But I can't see him being I can't see him knowing anything about video games.
I just wrote in the notes here, too old, might die.
Agree.
Michael Caine is like real old.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't act, but he can, and he's a great actor. But I went with someone, as soon as I thought this, I was like, I've got to write this down. This is brilliant. When you need someone to play someone in real life, a great actor, and then someone who's digital, Andy Serkis. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
You're right. I agree with that pick. All the way. Mm-hmm.
Nick, say the words. Pat, you are right. How are you so smart? I don't know.
Pat, you are right.
I really don't want to say the words now.
He was in
Wakanda, he was so great as Claw.
No. He played the butler in The Batman.
He did.
The Robert Pattinson version.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yes.
True.
He was Alfred. Wow. Pat, you were right. I said it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. Andrew Serkis is a good pick.
Yeah, that's a very good pick.
Uh-huh.
I won't say the words, but that is a very good pick.
Very good pick. I agree.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it for casting. Kind of the last thing to talk about. And we've kind of been talking about this as we've gone along when it comes to what changes you would make to the film. But I guess, Nick, kind of back over to you. What kind of changes would you make to the film that we kind of haven't discussed, as being related to the book, that type of thing?
If I were to sum it up, because I know I've gotten right up on my soapbox and kind of talked about how they completely messed up this movie and it should be more like the book. If I were to fix this movie, I wouldn't have just completely rewritten the story to be a love story to give people happy feelings at the end. I would have kept those dark moments in there.
The theme of the movie seems to be, and we talked about this, Nick, is that love conquers all. Right. That seems to be the theme of the film, but that's not quite the theme of the book. And I wish that they had kind of made the theme of the book translate a little bit better, because love is important and all that jazz. But I think the theme of the book is more like, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, you can get to a place where, you've won.
I do agree, but where I was trying to go with it was more of if we kept the film and its underlying story, I wouldn't have gotten rid of Shoto dying. I wouldn't gotten rid of the darkness that Sorrento was supposed to have, the true falling out that Parzival and Artemis, or Wade and Samantha, had. There was no true dark moment in this movie. There was nothing to recover from. The characters weren't reeling from any major losses, and they didn't have that drive or that reason to make it real and really push for it, other than, I want to be rich.
Right. Well, he did kill his aunt.
Yeah, but he didn't like his family that he killed. That's the funniest
so
part
easily that you didn't even think he cared. That was the only part I could feel that he wanted revenge from.
That's actually another kind of mini trigger for me, because in the book, he absolutely hates his aunt.
You don't get that from the movie that much.
You don't.
No.
The aunt actually comes out at one point and defends him to the boyfriend in the movie. In the book, the aunt calls the boyfriend to punch Wade in the face, to take his laptop, to pawn it for rent money.
Yeah, Wade would have never stolen his aunt's gloves.
Yeah, that whole thing didn't exist. They tried to give you a reason to care about the stacks being blown up, and it just didn't really work. It was too one-dimensional. Okay, so I'm going to revise changes to the film to say, give me a reason to care. Because everything, they were just trying to check off boxes on a list of items to hit, to be close enough to the book to bring the people from the book into the movie theater. That's my takeaway from that. And there just wasn't enough of a reason to care about the main characters, to care about the plot lines. There just wasn't enough there.
Again, the fact that the last 40 minutes of the film is just this giant action set piece that I don't particularly care about. And the fact that the meeting with Halliday at the end of the movie, the idea that the only test that really matters is whether he'll sign the contract that says he gets everything and not sharing it with his friends. It's not, there's no overcoming anything of any importance whatsoever. And I think you can add stakes into the film. And this is why I'm talking about letting the villains be actual villains. I know, okay, you killed a bunch of people in the stacks, but showing the corporation really, really being the bad guys, right? Like everyone at the corporation, for the most part, seemed like they were having a great time. All of those slave workers had giant ass smiles on their faces for a lot of this movie. And just making it so that there's, like you said, actual stakes.
Yeah.
In actual consequences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree.
And actual things learned.
That is actually one of those moments, the contract signing, that is like a holdover from the book, but you have no reason to care in the movie.
Yep.
In the book, you go into the story about how, in the movie they call her Karen Underwood, but her name was actually Kira, Ogden Morrow's wife. Her name was actually Kira. In the movie, they made her gamer name Kira, whereas her gamer name in the book was Lucosia. both Ogden Morrow and James Halliday had the hots for her, and she essentially chose Ogden Morrow because James Halliday never made a move. And,
oh man.
And that whole signing the contract to separate the company thing should hit harder if we knew anything about that in the movie and why they had a falling out as friends, because they shared a love interest, and one actually went and talked to her and befriended her and turned into a real relationship, and the other stayed in his closet.
Well, I feel like they did try to say that, though, in the movie.
There was that one cutscene at the curator's museum thing, but I don't think...
It doesn't give an impact as you probably want it to be.
Yeah.
The problem is they're trying to spend too much time. What this movie needs to be is like 20% less action, weirdly, and 20%, and because it's an action adventure movie, but like you need to spend less time shooting, like showing me the Halo guys shooting at people, and more time actually developing the character relationship in the film. And in a book, you can do that because you can tell, not show. In you know, even though people say
show don't tell,
but that's really not true. If you actually read most novels, even by people who say that, they're telling you things all the time, and it's good. That's part of that's part of the advantages of reading a book. In a movie, you have to tell someone, or you have to show someone, and showing takes time, and you can't skip over it. And that's what a lot of action movies kind of fall down on.
There was one other thing that I think this movie needs to work on as well, because you said like 20% less action, 20% more character development. And I think I would add to that X percentage of the writer and the director trusting their audience. Like I felt like that they thought that we as the audience were completely stupid. For example, with the reason this hit me when you said Kira, like her name was Kira, and I feel like that was an easy out because it's easy to say, oh well, her name was Kira as her gamer tag because that was the name of the girl in the Dark Crystal, not Lucosia as I don't remember what that reference was, but when I read it, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Another good example is after the race for the first key in the film, they have Halliday literally hit you on the head with it, saying we should just be able to go backwards, do it all over again. And it's like, you didn't have to hit me in the face with it. Like y'all are browbeating me a little too hard. Yeah. I could have understood that if you hadn't spoon-fed that to me.
That's a great place to get your 20 minutes back too. You could skip that.
Right, exactly. And I feel like there's probably a better way to make it more organic and not make me feel like an idiot.
I think you just take out the archives in the film and you just actually have Halliday be a character in the film. I know he's dead, but you do flashbacks and you have two stories going simultaneously, and you have most of the outside stuff just be his story. I know that's different from the book also, I believe, but you're making a movie, you got to change stuff.
But that would be a really cool way to tell the story of Halliday if you didn't have, the almanac, or if you weren't explaining all of the ins and outs of how these characters know his life so intimately. Like you could just say they're going through, an Easter egg hunt or a scavenger hunt of this guy's life, having his experience and his life parallel Wade Wilson's, I think would be a fantastic way to do it.
Yeah. And then part of the problem with the movie is a lot of times you're watching the characters watch something else, which is really boring.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, yeah.
And then the next scene, they talk about what they just watched, So.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think ultimately my takeaway is make me care about the characters in the movie. Make me care like you made me care in the book. If you can make me do that, you can change the story and just hit your major plot points, and it'll be a much better movie. I would be less upset about you changing the story into this crazy love story if there was some depth to the characters, enough for me to care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Original Remake Podcast. If you'd like to provide feedback or have a question, please email us at remake.cast at gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.